Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to give you guys the total rundown on everything you need to know in order to abuse Smolder for the last 3 weeks or so of the split. Currently very strong champion, and if you need an AD champion in your pool, Smolder could be the one to look for. So in this video there'll be a bunch of timestamps, but I will talk first about just the build basically. I'll talk more in depth about the build at the end of the video if you are curious, but I'll give you guys just the quick once over initially, and I'll talk about identity and go through over some of the lanes and games and just things that are should be focused on and are really important. So let's start off with build. There are 3 rune pages, which are Fleet, Conqueror, and Grasp. So again, I will talk about this more in depth at the end of the video, but the TLDR is you want Fleet versus skillshot champs, you want Grasp versus pretty much everything else, and you want Conqueror against like ultra free matchups like Gallios. So if you're not sure, the safest thing probably to take is Grasp, but yeah, like skillshot mages, especially stuff like Syndra would be Fleet. Grasp is absolutely critical against assassins, you know, especially things like Kiana. But yeah, that's like a good rule to use it. As for the runes themselves, I mean, they're pretty straightforward. You can just copy these. There really isn't much that you can change. The one thing you kind of can change is if you're in a matchup where you don't need boots early, like if they don't have skill shots and you're taking grasp or something, so like this for example, you should probably drop biscuits and go something like magical footwear or even triple tonic this game. But other than that, there really isn't a whole lot to do with your runes. You can pretty much just follow this. As for skill order, just QWE every game. Now for items, there's a lot of different item builds on Smolder. I believe the best mid lane build is to go Essence, Reaver, Shojin, and then you can build basically whatever you want after that. A couple kind of important things to quickly clear up before I, move on is that there are some games where you might want to play tier Triforce instead, and this is basically because you want extra HP early. So if you're in a difficult assassin matchup, something like Zed, you might want to go tier Triforce instead of going for the Essence Reaver. So you go tier Triforce Man Immune and then build regular items, whereas with this build you go Essence Reaver Shojin and then build your regular items. Most AD assassins aren't that bad, and you have ways of dealing with most of the other types of champs. So the things that Smolder really struggles against are basically things that he doesn't have a good kind of cheese to dealing with. So what I mean by that is like if you're against skillshot mages, you can rush tier 2 boots and you can take fleet and you'll be able to dodge most of their abilities. If you're against kind of like burst champs or assassin champs, you can oftentimes run grasp and the extra tankiness plus resolve will be fine. The most difficult champs to play against are the ones that can poke you from far away that don't really have skill shots and merc treads aren't effective against. So like Victor is a very good example of a difficult champ. And I would say if you want to play a lot of Smolder, definitely worth banning Victor at the moment. The other things, again, are kind of champs that you don't have a good defensive item against. So if you play against an AP assassin like a Kali or LeBlanc, you can easily build a Hex Drinker. If you're playing against an AD assassin though, most AD assassins are weak in lane. Like, so you'll beat champs like Kiana or Talon anyway. But Zed is one of the harder ones because there isn't really anything you can build against him, and he also has like a very strong lane. So again, I think tier Triforce against these champs. I guess the only other thing for build is why not the Hubris build mid? So I'm of the opinion that it's too difficult to snowball the mid lane matchups. So I think you're just taking a kind of you're taking a build that scales worse in order for it should not get the same lead as you would bot lane, because the thing is, like, mid lane is much easier to neutralize, and I don't think there are many matchups, at least in high elo, where I'd be really confident that with some sort of Hubris Comet build that I'd be able to actually snowball. So I think this is better, but you can experiment if you want. So now on to kind of identity and like what do you want to pick into. So Smolder is a little misunderstood. Smolder is very strong in the early game, and I'll show this. Kind of like Victor, he's very good 1v1. This is it's a little different from Victor. Your 1v1 doesn't come just from your trading power. It's that you have a lot of push, and your movement speed is going to allow you to get pretty aggressive on the lane, and also you make use of a lot of these runes. On top of that, you're one of the best champs at rushing tier 2 boots, because like you're not really super mana gated, and again, like a lot of your damage comes from stacks. So what that means is that, when your opponent might have to build something like a chapter in order to just, actually play the lane, you can just build something like Mercs, and then that means that you can dodge all their skill shots, you have like really good trading power and stuff. So it's kind of like a cheesy method of being strong in lane, but that's very important. So the big thing with Smolder is that you're meant to win lane. He is very reliant on accelerating. You don't necessarily have to like get fed, but it's really important that you don't fall behind, and you want to be stronger than your opponent so that you can like push side, so that you can farm quicker than them, so you can take plates, take jungle camps, so it is really important that you're not just like AFK stacking to 225. And I think like if you have a mindset for Smolder, it's actually better to have the mindset that you need to snowball than it is to have the mindset of like you want to just scale. Even though it is fine to scale on Smolder, it's like what makes this champ better than other champs is the ability to accelerate. So if you just want to play like an AFK scaling champ, you should play something else. You need to be very aggressive and be very active and making sure you're like taking as much gold as possible, and also be very aware of like avoiding fights early, because you are weak in any sort of early skirmish. So yeah, that's like the TLDR. As for things it's good against, it's really, really good against any melee basically that you can stack up for free. And yeah, some of those harder matchups, the ones that you don't have a good item to buy, should probably be avoided, but he has a pretty good blind. You know, he has a dash, and again, he is good in most matchups. So that's kind of the TLDR of like when you should pick him, I guess, which is basically always if you want, but if you wanted to use him as a counter, just pick him into melees. So yeah, okay, I think we can go on to our actual game. So I have a few to show you guys. First, I'll show you guys this one here, which is a Smolder versus Lissandra game. So this guy has Comet Domination, which means he has a very strong laning setup, right? He's got Cheap Shot, he's got Comet Scorch, all that stuff. And I'll show you kind of how you're meant to win these sort of lanes. So one little trick you can do is you are much stronger than most champs at level 1. So if you can come and take a bush, either... There's a couple ways you can do this. If you're the one that gets prior, what will probably happen, at least in high-low, is the enemy mid will try and ward your raptors at level 1 because they can't get prior. You just need to come sit on the side of the lane where they will be coming to raptors. So if I'm on blue side, I can come sit in this bush, and that means if she comes here, I can get a Q and an auto, or if she goes here, potentially I can go behind her. And this is really, really good to do against mage champions especially, because they don't really have a good way of trading back against you. And being able to, like, you don't need this cheese level 1, I guess, but there are a lot of lanes that you can just, like, win with a level 1 cheese. That's like a really, really good start. If they're not going to ward your raptors at level 1, then it is a little more difficult. They might instead be guarding their raptors, although it's not guaranteed. Another thing you can do is you can like hide in fog here and try showing the lane late. Anyway, just like little cheeses that might make a difference in some matchups, but ultimately you don't actually need it to happen. So very, very important as Smolder is to leverage the fact that because you're AD, your auto attacks are doing more damage to the wave, which basically guarantees push. And also, if you can, try play aggressively enough to force your opponent to use cooldowns to CS, right? See this position here? Very, very crucial. Be standing kind of like to the side of the wave and be trying to use your movement speed and, you know, basically make it so that they have to use cooldowns to either CS or to match the push as opposed to using them on you. If you just sit back and you let cooldowns be used on you, you'll get forced out of lane really fast. So that's like, it's very important to be aggressive, which you can see here, right? Trying to kite forward with my fleet movement speed, trying to bait abilities out of her, stuff like that. So again, like very, very active in the early game is the focus. If there is a fight in the jungle like that, don't bother going to it. I mean, level 1 or level 2 Smolder is absolutely useless. Now, level 2 is a pretty important time. You can choose W for better trading, or you can choose E for a bit more safety. I normally go E. But yeah, you can go W. And one thing that is actually kind of important as Smolder is finding out, or like finding the best way to use your mana in the early game, because if you ever end up like, you know, out of health, but you have a lot of mana left, that means you didn't use enough abilities. At the same time, like if you use too much mana and you're forced to reset, you know, like that's really bad too. So you've really got to be careful. And yeah, kind of like you want to sort of like match your resources, I guess. Like if you're getting low on health, definitely spam more mana. And if you're like, you know, getting low on mana, then like you maybe need to be a bit more conservative. So yeah, some unfortunate things here, which meant Lissandra got a free base, but you're still like fine with that. This is again one of your goals, is if you can make your opponent recall first, which is like what happened here. That means that your opponent's gonna have less gold on her first base than yours, right? Like she went home and spent 400. I'm gonna go home and spend more than that, and that's very important because it's gonna allow you to start to actually win the trade. So like I base here, I believe somewhere. Okay, yeah, I shoved one more. Oh, I see. That's right. I forgot this game. If you can greed for tier 2 boots first base, it is good. It's kind of unrealistic though. Like, don't worry if you can't get like a full Mercs or whatever first base. Like, don't worry. The component buys are completely fine. In fact, in some matchups, component buys are better because like if you can, you know, base before your opponent gets chapter, it doesn't bother you to have 2 long swords, but it does bother your opponent not to have a chapter. You know, and here's kind of like the best case scenario. She doesn't have chapter and I have Mercs. So at this point in the game, it's still pretty much the same thing. You want to be looking for trades. I think one other like kind of little piece of advice is don't worry too much about stacking. Like you do want stacks, obviously, like if there are creeps for free, go for them, but just don't in for them, right? Like the stacks will come no matter what. But yeah, at this stage of the game, especially with the tier 2 boots, it's very easy to punish cooldowns. So like if your opponent uses some like that, you can look to play a little more aggro. And the tier 2 boots plus the E is going to give you safety against basically anything. Like that, Lysandra Belveth is one of the strongest ganking combos you could get mid. And you can see I'm able to survive. So that's like another reason it's a good blind, is because like imagine even if you're a more OP champ in this situation, like let's say you're playing someone like Victor, you know, like you just die there pretty much, even with Flash, because they just cover so much distance. So yeah, I think as you get later in the lane, you start to get a bit stronger. Typically, you can get a solo kill around like 10 minutes or so. That's like a window you can look for. But generally, you'll just be playing for prior. Continue trying to get as many stacks as possible. Try and get deep vision in their jungle. Deep vision slows down the game a lot because it'll spot out their jungler. Some other kind of like random pieces of advice is, if possible, you actually only want to base when you have TP up. What I mean by that is like, it's really important as a champ like Smolder to just be on every single wave, like just be always getting the CS. Now, you'll be able to go for like your first base recall at around, like, let's say 5 minutes. That one's covered, right? Because you have TP up. That means your second TP is going to be around like 11 minutes or so, I believe. So that base is covered as well, but most likely you will need to find one base in between those two where you get a reset without TP, without losing anything. So because you get prior, that's normally possible. You'll be able to kind of choose your base. It's not ideal if you die, obviously, but if you can ever get this base like this, I mean, actually it kind of worked out. I didn't lose much CS. If you can ever get a base like this where you don't lose any farm, that's like really, really valuable. You're trying to find that like second free recall, because your first and your third will be covered by TP. So yeah, that was kind of a lot of information, but I really needed to lay the ground rules, I guess, for like what you're looking for. And just again, please play aggro. You know, like you've got to play aggro. Don't play Smolder to AFK scale. Let's see. Okay, so next one is against something like Akali. So if you're against most assassins early, you'll actually be able to bully them. But against super, super strong champs early, so again, champs like Akali or Aurelia or Yasuo, you probably want to let the wave just come to you early. And just like play defensively, basically. The thing is, like, a lot of these champs are not very good at using their prior early, and neither are you. So like, you don't actually have to worry too much about getting the wave. So in these sort of situations, definitely take Grasp, and you probably want to rush a defensive item, either HP or you can rush Hex Drinker. And you can kind of see, like, you know, you can play for Grasp procs, and other than that, you just want to like try and keep this wave kind of like in this position as long as you can. You know, you can see that like I'm willing to pull the wave here in order to keep it off my turret. That's very, very important, because you just don't want to get run down the lane. And actually, like, if you have good wave control, these matchups end up pretty easy. The main time that you're going to actually, like, snowball over these champs is in the mid game. You know, like, when you just farm much, much faster than them. Most likely, though, you guys will be fairly even throughout the early game. That being said, like, okay, I feel like Akali is kind of an exception. Like, you can definitely bully champs like Kiana and Talon. It's just, like, Akali's really, really strong early. And by keeping the wave close to you, you should be able to at least, like, go even. And if you go even, like, you're winning pretty hard. If I just kind of skim through, I think eventually I get forced to base. Yeah, there's not too much to be said here. This VOD is on my Twitch and my YouTube if you want to go watch it. This, again, really good buy. Get Hex Drinker refillable, and now I'm basically invincible. So at this point of the game, you're, again, doing the same thing. Like, you kind of want to try and pin her in lane if possible. So you can, you know, just, like, keep pushing. Try and set up your stacks if you can. You can see I, like, auto each of the backline once, just to get them low, and then we can queue them again afterwards. Just to guarantee that we get 3 out of 3. And it's quite difficult for these champs to actually match this push, which is quite good, you know, because again, similar to like that Lasana replay we just saw, if they're using cooldowns to CS, that's really, really good for you. One of the scariest times, just as Smolder in general, but against assassins especially, is on this like first grubs or whatever. With grubs and dragon, if your team wants to fight, if you can hit ult, you can still fight basically. Like if you have guaranteed CC on your team, your ult does a lot of damage. If you can't hit ult, then it's probably only contestable if you can make it so the enemy mid actually can't come, which is not always realistic. So yeah, again, not too much from this point. Once you get to this point, though, like you are pretty stable. It'll be pretty hard for them to kill you unless you really mess up, and you're just like mega outscaling. You know, you should be able to beat them on side lane if you end up building more. And I think if you just skip to the very end of this game, yeah, I end up like over, I think at the very end of the game, I have like plus 100 CS or something. Yeah, that's really what you're playing for, is the efficiency in the mid game. You're not really expecting to beat a champ as strong as Akali early. So another champ I want to show you guys, I think I played it yesterday. Is a game against, what do you do against like other marksmen, things like Corki or Akshan. So actually you beat these champs pretty hard. Like Akshan I think you can lose to on the first wave, but you actually are pretty good at out trading these champs. So you just want to kind of just play it super standard. You just like get push on the first few waves, and then you yeah, you can like start to force trades with creep advantage because they'll have to match you with orders. Playing around your grass proc is very important, right? You can see it counting up there, and then I get the grass proc. One thing to kind of keep in mind for these matchups is, I said before how you can drop biscuits in order to go magic boots, but if you want ninja tabi, you probably don't want to do that. Like for example, against Akshan, I think you might want to rush tabi. Against Corki though, I don't think you really need to. So that can be something kind of worth considering, I guess. But yeah, there's really not much to these matchups other than making sure that you take the correct runes and focus primarily on pushing the wave, because whoever has control over the wave is going to be the one who wins the trades, right? Because they have more creeps. So this lane, to be honest, was kind of a snooze fest. I think I end up like dying to a jungle gank or something. But again, like these champs, you're just looking to outpace them. Like at some point, it becomes like much easier for you to shove waves. And you just farm so much faster, right? So you can see up here, he's got 106 CS, I've got 129, and like I haven't really done anything. And then if we go to like, I don't know, if we skip to like 20 minutes or so, you can see, right, like now I'm up 50 CS, and it's because like I'm much quicker at pushing waves, I'm much quicker at farming camps. So it's all about that acceleration, right? Like if you end up being, even in the early game, it's okay, but you can't fall behind. You have to be at least as strong as your opponent to make sure you can continue to accelerate. So the last video I will show you guys is actually one that I'm going to upload to YouTube in a few days or so. A road to rank 1 that I actually recorded. So when this one comes out, you guys will probably find it useful. But this is a game I played of Smolder versus Syndra, which is, this is one of those matchups where like you are really, really reliant on using your movement speed and like rushing mercs basically. So you can see like Syndra does bully you early, but if you're able to like get on the wave early, use your movement speed, you can dodge the Qs, and it's difficult for her to match prior without using abilities. So like if she uses abilities on you, you will get the prior. If she uses abilities on the wave, then hey, she's not using them on you. So these matchups are quite skill-based, I guess, but if you play them well, you should actually win. And if you ever dodge Qs like this, start to get very aggro. You can see like I'm looking for auto attacks, I'm playing very aggro on the creep and stuff like that. So yeah, that's all kind of again, kind of the basic of like get push, and then like you can defend yourself on these waves just by having the prior, right? Like it's not so much that you're actually stronger than Syndra, but the wave is stronger than Syndra. If she does actually get a trade on you, like here you can see that she does win out. I don't really have any sort of response. But once again, you're just playing for like some sort of component buy. Like here I went for boots and null magic, and then this is really good, right? Because like I have much better items than she does. If she recalls right now, she's going to come back with some really terrible items. If she greeds her base, which is what she did, I get a lot of time to free farm. So we're actually like fine with that basically, right? Because we just spent that whole time farming. And yeah, as you can see there, double amp tome compared to like boots and MR, it's so much better for us, right? Like unless she gets chapter, it's fine. And if she gets chapter and we get mercs, that's also fine. So yeah, basically like any base amount is pretty much always favorable to you, unless again they base with more gold than you. And if you play your lane well, that should pretty much always be avoidable. Obviously if you make like a lot of laning mistakes, it'll be hard, but same sort of thing. Like I think I end up like around 10 minutes or so, and at this point like I've got a lot of AD. It's very easy for me to accelerate. I'm up 20 CS, and if you're up 20 CS as Smolder, you're pretty, yeah, you're in a pretty good spot. Again, like you don't need to be up CS, but you really can't be down CS, and the more CS you are up, the quicker you're going to accelerate, right? And it's really, really important that you're getting 6 out of 6 in every wave. Not even, it doesn't have to be 6 stacks, but you've really got to make sure you're getting 6 creeps. So like try and like prep the backline first and then queue it down. And then, yeah, you can like worry about getting the rest of them. As long as you don't miss any, it should be fine. And then like over the game, it should end up being really good. So that's basically how the lane phase goes. The TLDR is that each different type of champ requires a different response, whether that's like playing for like the heavy trades with the movement speed and stuff. So it's like very difficult, I guess, for me to give you like the one size fits all way of playing every lane like I could do for Victor. So my recommendation would be to go and look at my Twitch. Like I said, I have so many Smolder games recently. So yeah, you'll be able to find like plenty of VODs and see how I approach each of them. What else might you guys be interested in? I guess just like a little bit of mid games. So mid game is very reliant on you being ahead 1v1, or at least like, okay, not being ahead 1v1, being able to win the 1v1. Smolder normally does win the side lane, but if you need to itemize in order to win the side lane, that's worth it, right? Like if you need Ninja Tabi to win your side lane matchup, or if you need Mercs or Hex Drink or whatever, you absolutely should, because in the mid game, you want to go to the side lane basically and push it out as far as you can without dying. If you, the further in, the better, because it means you get access to more jungle camps and you get access to like taking turrets and stuff. So you can see here that like I'm pushing the side lane. I'm very confident that I can fight a Kali given that I have my Hex Drinker. Again, if you are in the position where you can't contest this, you know, like if you're too scared of a Kali 1v1, you're in trouble, right? Like that would be a rough game for Smolder if you're starting to lose the prior. So again, very important that you're trying to win your lane hard enough to be in that position, or like if you don't think you can do that, then probably use Smolder as a counter pick instead of a blind, because so much of your strength is related to this, like being able to push out and make people respond to you and get access to more camps and stuff. Sometimes if your team is losing, like in this spot, you won't actually be able to push side. You might just have to like come group mid for a little while. That's still okay though, right? Because like it stalls the game, which is fine. As you can see, jungle camps are pretty quick. If you can make sure to stack off them all with your Q, that's pretty valuable. Yeah, so I don't think there's like too much to it. Obviously, if you have TP, this is easy. I didn't continue pushing here because I didn't have the vision. But that's, again, like kind of a side laning fundamental. So that's kind of like what your aim is for the mid game. And then, yeah, team fights. I mean, I don't even really need to talk about team fights. It's pretty easy. You basically just show up and you spam WR and Qs and stuff. I'll just show you a late game team fight here. But once you get strong, it's pretty simple. Like your W and R deal incredible amounts of damage. The best advice I can give you for team fighting is to not waste your E. Try and hold it for a long time. I am guilty of wasting E, but it's like absolutely your lifeline. So if you waste it, it can be bad. So I guess we'll finish this video just by talking a little bit about itemization and maybe stacks. You might be wondering what are good times for you to get your stacks. Personally, I think that like, okay, I kind of go for 125 at like 11 minutes with one item and tier 2 boots. That's like kind of the, around 11 minutes or so, that's when I'm looking to fight. As for 225, if you can definitely get it pretty early. The earliest I've had it is around like 17 minutes against, I remember I had it 16 against a Malzahar, and I think I had 17 against the Gallier. But realistically, it's more like 19 to 20. If you're getting 225 at like 22 minutes or whatever, it's not like GG. In fact, like you're still in an okay spot. But again, Smolder is not OP if you're getting your stacks that late, right? Like you're really trying to accelerate, get them earlier. Acceleration really is the key. So yeah, try and have like 2 items and 225 by around like 19 minutes or so. If you have 0 deaths and you have good farm, it should be very achievable. But yeah, as for itemization, I mean, I've kind of already talked about the main things. I think Essence Reaver Shojin is overall the best there is. Tier Triforce if you want to. As for items beyond that point, your general options that you can go for is you can go for Rapid Fire, BT, pen items like LDR or Grievous Wounds, Mortal Reminder is what it's called. Then there's also like Maw or something you can buy. I've seen a lot of weird things on Smolder too. Like you can buy Leandre, you can buy Randuin. Basically, it's like complete 2 items and then whatever you want. If you're not sure, third item should almost always be Rapid Fire or like LDR or Mortal Reminder. But there are definitely games where like you want to complete your Hex Drinker into a Maw, or you want like BT for more sustain. But you really can't go wrong. Like you can build basically whatever you want and it'll be fine. So yeah, that'll probably be it. I'm trying to think, is there anything else I need to say about runes? Not really. I guess like one tiny little adaptation you could do is like, if you're in an ultra free matchup, and you feel like you don't need to absorb life for mid game because you're going to build a BT or something, you could swap this for presence and maybe you'll get more stacks in lane. But it's pretty minor. I wouldn't worry too much about it. So yeah, that's kind of it. If you have any questions, just come to my stream or leave them in the comment section below. I think Smolder is fundamentally like a pretty simple champion, but it's got a lot of execution in like the difficulty of the playstyle, right? Like again, making sure you're always ahead, and if you fall behind, you're kind of useless. But yeah, hopefully this guide was somewhat helpful for you guys. I'll probably make a longer, more in-depth and more structured one in the new season if he remains popular. But again, I think there's like 3 weeks left on the season, so I just wanted to kind of put this one together. But yeah, if you liked the video, go and like and subscribe. See you in the next one.